The next pose that we're going to learn is called the Cobra Pose, and we have already seen its sister pose, the baby Cobra Pose, while lying down when we were doing sun salutations. The Cobra Pose is its full version, and while it can be extremely healthy and injury preventative when practiced on a healthy spine, in fact, if you do have a healthy spine, you should be practicing this pose almost every day for as long as you live, and you should ideally have started when you were a child. If you did that, then you would not have any problems with your spine. But not everybody is in that position, and a lot of us do have injuries and problems with the spine. However, if you do have herniated discs, then this pose is a big no-no. You should not be doing this pose, and just stick to the baby Cobra version. Even that is a bit of a stretch, so you have to really watch your back, so to speak. However, if you do have a healthy spine, let's dive into that pose, and just keep in mind a couple of additional benefits. This pose really tonifies your spinal cord, and it also opens up and strengthens the muscles of the chest and the shoulder. So with that being said, let's learn this pose. Once again, just like all back bends, or most of the back bends in yoga, this pose is performed by lying on the floor. Now, while most of the action is taking place, or at least visible to the eye action is taking place in our shoulders, in our elbows, in our palms, and obviously our lower back, a lot of people tend to neglect the feet and just let them kind of like dangle. Now, while you can definitely do this pose with that fashion, it's actually not recommended, because you want to have engaged, strong, elongated legs in this pose to protect your sacral region, to protect the ligaments of that in that region, so that your joints will be nicely aligned and are not compromised as part of this pose. So before we're going to get into the Cobra Pose, we're going to fix our legs. So lying on the floor, we're going to lift the right leg, and we're going to stretch it out as far as possible. Then lifting the left leg, stretching it out as far as possible to the back room. And with that, with the legs being stretched out, we're going to slightly engage our glutes to keep the legs from kind of splaying to the side and keep them nice and tight. Now, with the legs being in that position, and you have to keep the legs in that position for the duration of the entire practice, we're going to position the hands in a 11 and 1 position. So the closer the hands to the body, the more pronounced and the more difficult the Cobra Pose will be. The further they are from the body, the easier it will be. So if you are a beginner, then position your hands at the 11 and 1 o'clock. The elbows should be slightly bent. Now, keeping engagement through the lower body, long legs, semi-engaged glutes, pressing through the palms, lifting the chest primarily by strengthening or extending our elbows. The gaze is fixed somewhere directly in the front, or we're staring at a point on the front of our mat. And this could be your Cobra. If you don't really feel anything here, or you want to increase a bit of a tension, increase the tension, you can bring the hands a little bit closer to your body, and that's going to really pronunciate your Cobra. Now, a lot of people here, once they get into some sort of a back bend, they lock their elbows and they just let their chest and neck sort of hang forward. Now, while this is very attractive, because you're not leveraging your muscles to hold up your upper body, but you're really using your bones and the joints to do all of the work, I actually suggest the opposite. So when you are in a Cobra, have your elbows slightly bent so that you can feel the engagement of the muscles, your biceps and your pecs, as you're holding your upper body up. This is the part of the Cobra that strengthens the muscles of your chest. If you just lock your elbows and let your shoulders and your neck just hang forward, it's kind of like a half-assed Cobra. You're doing the work, but you're not quite doing it. So bend your elbows and really press through the palms into the floor. If you feel that this is starting to become too much, you can walk your hands a little bit further in front of you to decrease the bend in your lower back, or just release all the way down to the floor. If you've never done back bends, this could be a very, very taxing, very strenuous pose. So anything that has to do with our lower back, anything that has to do with our spine should be approached with utmost caution. So remember, I don't know your body, I can't feel your body. You are the only person who can feel what's going inside. So be really attentive and keep in mind that these poses are meant to be held for longer periods of time than the, let's say, standing poses. So just coming up into this pose and holding it for 3 breaths is great, but eventually we want to be able to hold this breath, to hold this pose for 5, maybe even 10 breaths. So even though it's very tempting to come up and stretch out into the Cobra right away, you will notice that after the first or second breath, you'll probably feel very unhealthy in your lower back. So words of caution: moderate your effort and just come up maybe 50% of the way, and see if you can hold it for 3-4 breaths. If you can still successfully hold this pose for, let's say, 5 breaths, then you can increase the bend in your back until you reach that pose where, that point where you just feel just enough stretch in your lower back that you can comfortably hold it for 5 breaths. And then stay with that posture. You can release all the way down to the floor, take a break. As I said in the previous posture, the locust pose, inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth to release the tension, and do it again. And you can do this a couple of times, maybe 3 times at most. So remember, strong legs, long legs, semi-engaged glutes, hands 11 and 1 o'clock, slightly bent elbows, feeling the support of our chest through our biceps and the pecs, and gaze directed forward or slightly to the floor. And then increasing the back bend by moving the hands closer towards the body. The classical version of this Cobra pose is actually done by having the hands next to our chest, really close to the chest, with elbows all the way close to the chest. But this is a more advanced version of the pose, and for us beginners, we want to have our hands a little bit further in front of us. So this is the Cobra pose, and while it looks very simple, it can be an extremely beneficial pose when you practice it correctly, taking all of the precautionary measures not to injure your spine. So let's move on to the next pose.